The radio crackled with static. Officer Carlos Gomez checked his rearview mirror. It was a dark, quiet night in Medellin, or so he thought. He turned his patrol car left onto a narrow street. His partner, a young man named Juan, was almost asleep in the passenger seat. Suddenly, bright headlights flashed behind them. They were too close. Carlos felt a knot in his stomach. The engines of two motorcycles roared. Carlos didn't have time to react. Loud pops echoed through the air. Pop, pop, pop. Glass shattered. His partner screamed. Juan was hit. Carlos felt a sharp, burning pain in his left shoulder. He tried to speed up, but the motorcycles were already gone. They sped away into the dark hills. He scrambled for his radio. His hand was shaking. "Officer down! Officer down!" His voice was full of fear. This was happening almost every single night in Medellin. Police officers were being hunted. Not by accident, not by normal criminals. They were specific targets. They had a price on their heads, a high price. Carlos looked over at Juan. His partner was not moving. How did a city become a twisted game of hunter and hunted? How did a human life get a simple price tag? And who was powerful enough to buy the deaths of the police officers who ruled the streets? But this didn't start here. To understand how a city became a war zone for its own police, we need to look back. We need to look at Medellin, Colombia in the late 1980s. The city was beautiful. Green mountains surrounded it. It had parks and plazas, but beneath the beauty, there was a dark, rotten core. Medellin was the capital of the world's biggest cocaine business, and at the top of that business was one man, Pablo Escobar. Pablo was a billionaire. He had more money than he could ever count. Money was his power, and his ego was as big as his bank account. Pablo was greedy. He wanted to own the whole city. He wanted everyone to do what he said. If you took his money, you worked for him. If you said no, you died. He called it plata o plomo, silver or lead, money or a bullet. It was a simple rule, and it was very effective. Pablo built private zoos on his large ranches. He built houses for the poor people in the city. Some poor people loved him. They called him Robin Hood. To them, he was a hero who shared his money. They didn't see the violence he used to get that money. They didn't want to see it. But Pablo had a problem. He was rich and powerful, but he was also a criminal, and he had a big ego. He wanted to be a politician. He wanted the Colombian government to respect him. The Colombian government was small and weak. It didn't have the power of the drug cartels. For a long time, Pablo and the government had a secret deal. He would not kill judges or politicians, and the government would leave him alone. But Pablo's ego was too big. He wanted more. He ran for a place in Colombia's Congress and won. He thought he was untouchable. Then a brave government official named Rodrigo Lara Bonilla spoke the truth. Lara Bonilla knew Pablo was a drug trafficker. He said it out loud in public. He exposed Pablo's true business to the world. Pablo's ego was hurt. He was angry. He knew Lara Bonilla could destroy his political career. Pablo decided Lara Bonilla had to die. A motorcycle with two men drove up next to Lara Bonilla's car in Bogota. They fired automatic weapons. Rodrigo Lara Bonilla died in his car. The government was shocked. The public was angry. The old secret deal with the drug cartels was dead. The government started a new kind of war against Pablo and the Medellin Cartel. But Pablo had an army of hitmen. He had judges, police, and politicians on his payroll. He thought he could outlast the government. He thought he could win. The real trouble for Pablo began when the government started talking about extradition.
This was his worst nightmare. He hated the U.S. government. He was terrified of being sent to a cold, hard U.S. prison. He knew he could control Colombian prisons, but a U.S. prison was a death sentence to his power. Pablo famously said, "I prefer a grave in Colombia to a cell in the United States." He tried to stop extradition with his money. He offered to pay off Colombia's entire national debt, billions of dollars, but the government said no. He tried to use violence. He bombed government buildings. He planted bombs on airplanes. He killed presidential candidates. His strategy was simple: terrify the nation, force them to stop extradition to save their own lives. His normal methods were brutal. His bombs killed innocent people. The whole country was afraid.
Pablo was getting desperate. The government kept coming. They kept pushing for extradition. His normal methods of terror weren't working as well as he hoped. The U.S. government was giving money and training to the Colombian police. They were hunting Pablo with real power. He needed a new kind of terror. He needed a way to break the government's power on the streets. He needed to target the people who were on the front lines, the men in uniform, the everyday police officers of Medellin. The psychological pressure was building in Pablo's mind. His empire was at risk. He needed to strike back in a way that would make every single police officer afraid. Pablo called his top lieutenants together on one of his jungle ranches. In a dark room, away from the light, he laid out his plan. His controlled voice was chilling. "I will pay," he said. "For every police officer you kill in Medellin, I will pay. They will know the price of their lives." He didn't just want them dead. He wanted them broken. He wanted to destroy the entire system from the bottom up. He called it the pistol plan. The word spread fast. In the poor neighborhoods of Medellin, the news was like a new gold rush. Young men with no jobs and no hope heard the offer. They had grown up seeing Pablo as a hero who gave them money. Now he was offering them a path to fortune. All they needed was a gun and a target. Pablo's offer was specific. For every uniformed police officer killed in Medellin, he would pay 1 million Colombian pesos. In today's money, that is worth much more. But in Colombia in the late 1980s, it was a fortune. It was more money than a police officer made in a year. It was more money than these young men had ever seen. The young hitmen of Medellin didn't see it as murder. They didn't see the human lives. They saw it as a business opportunity. Greed had replaced morals. Pablo's ego was buying human souls for the price of a car. The first killings started slowly. A traffic cop on a street corner. A lone officer walking home after work. They were easy targets. The sicarios, or assassins, used motorcycles. 2 men on a bike. They would speed up, fire their weapon, and disappear into the crowded streets. The city of Medellin was perfect for this kind of war. It has narrow, winding streets and crowded hills. There were plenty of places to hide. The young men would watch a cop for days. They would learn his routine. When does he leave for work? Which bus does he take? Who does he meet for lunch? Every detail was noted. Every kill brought them $3,000. They would get the money from Pablo's lieutenants, no questions asked. The sicarios became famous in their neighborhoods. They had new clothes. They bought motorcycles. They had power. And everyone knew where that power came from. Greed was like a poison in the poor neighborhoods. Young boys, 12 or 13 years old, started dreaming of becoming sicarios. They wanted to work for the patron. They wanted to kill for money. But that was only the beginning. Medellin changed almost overnight.
Police officers stopped patrolling alone. They rode in groups. They carried heavier weapons. They wore heavy vests. But Pablo was smart. He knew they would adapt, so he raised the price. For high-ranking officers, like captains or lieutenants, the price went up, thousands more. Now the stakes were even higher. The sicarios weren't just looking for easy targets. They were planning bigger attacks. They were stalking the leaders of the police force. A police colonel was shot and killed as he was driving home. The hitman had used a fake delivery truck to block his car. His ego was a trophy kill. His death was on every news channel. It was a scorecard of terror for Pablo. Imagine going to work every single day knowing you are a primary target. A bounty has been placed on your uniform. You can't trust anyone. The neighbor's son could be a sicario. The delivery boy could be watching you. Every motorcycle engine sounded like a death sentence. Police officers were deep in fear. They felt the pressure every single minute. They started parking their patrol cars blocks away from their homes. They didn't want the sicarios to know where they lived. They didn't want their wives and children to be in danger. An officer named Pedro told a reporter, "I take off my uniform the moment my shift ends. I wear a hat. I wear sunglasses. I use a different path every day. My wife cries every time I leave for work. We live in fear." Betrayal was everywhere. Pablo had so much money that he could buy information from inside the police department. Hitmen often knew where high-ranking officers were hiding. They had the secrets. The system was rotting from the inside. A secret list was found on one captured hitman. It had the names of hundreds of officers. It had their home addresses, their phone numbers, even their families' names. He felt trapped. There was no way back now. The sicarios grew bolder. The killing became a daily part of life in Medellin. Pop, pop, pop. The sound of bullets was the city's new rhythm, and everyone in the city carried the consequences of Pablo's ego. But this was only the beginning. The terror was about to move from the streets and into the safe zones. The terror was about to break the rules. The sicarios started attacking police stations. They used bombs. They used machine guns. They didn't just want to kill officers. They wanted to destroy the entire police force's power. One station in a busy neighborhood was bombed in the middle of the day. Officers were inside doing paperwork or eating lunch. Families were nearby. Then boom! The entire building shook. Fire and smoke filled the rooms. Windows shattered. People ran from their homes, screaming. More innocent people were caught in the crossfire. Normal citizens were dying. A school bus was near a police vehicle when a bomb exploded. Innocent children were hurt. This was exactly what Pablo wanted. He wanted chaos. He wanted the city to scream. He wanted the government to surrender. A young man named David was visiting his uncle at the police station when the bomb went off. He was just 18. He wanted to be an engineer. He had a future. He was killed by the bomb. His uncle survived. His uncle went back to work, but his heart was broken. He wanted revenge. This was a consequence that money could not buy. The city of Medellin was falling apart. Police were afraid to do their jobs. Arrests dropped. Crimes went unsolved. Drug trafficking was happening in plain sight. Pablo was winning his war on the government. He was showing the world that he could control the streets with his greed. Pablo's ego was fed by the daily news. Another 5 police officers killed. To him, it was a victory scorecard. He felt more powerful than ever. He was a domestic terrorist, and he was proud of it. He was the richest man in the world, and he could buy anything, even the rules. Pablo felt invincible. But he had made one big mistake. He had created an enemy that was not like the weak Colombian government, an enemy that wanted real revenge. And that's when everything changed. The police force was broken. It was small and weak, but it was not defeated. A new group of officers was rising from the ash. They were young, they were smart, and they were deep in anger. They had seen their partners die. They had buried too many friends. They didn't just want to catch Pablo Escobar. They didn't care about a judge or a jail. They wanted him dead. This new group was a secret unit. They called it the Search Block. Their only mission was to hunt and kill Pablo. They were not normal police. They had real power. They had training from the U.S. Navy SEALs. They had advanced technology to listen to Pablo's radios. The Search Block didn't follow the old rules. Pablo had showed them that the rules could be broken, so they broke them too. They tortured suspects to get information on Pablo's hiding spots. They killed anyone who helped Pablo. They were brutal. They were effective. They were the very monster that Pablo had created with his violence. The Search Block moved into the poor neighborhoods of Medellin. They didn't pat the sicarios on the head. They didn't read them their rights. They rounded them up. Young men were put against walls. If you had a gun or if you had money you couldn't explain, you were dead. There were no trials. There were no jails. The sicarios started to get afraid. Money wasn't worth the risk if you couldn't live to spend it. They were trapped. Their hero, the patron, was in hiding. He couldn't save them. The system Pablo had built with his ego was starting to fail. The Search Block had a simple message for the neighborhoods. You help Pablo, we kill you. You help us, you live. It was silver or lead, but this time, lead was the only real option. Greed started to turn into fear. Pablo's own money was used to find him. The Search Block offered their own reward. The government offered huge money for information on Pablo's hiding spot. It was more money than any hitman could make killing police.
Betrayal was the new language of the cartel. Pablo's closest friends started giving up his secrets to save their own lives. They told the police about his safe houses. They told them about his delivery routes. Pablo's world was shrinking. The power he thought his money had bought was vanishing. The city of Medellin was now a battlefield. Search Block versus sicarios. Medellin versus itself. The sound of bombs and gunfire was constant. Bodies were found on the streets every single day. The consequences of Pablo's greedy choice were heavy for everyone. Pressure was on the whole country. Pablo was still a domestic terrorist. He was bombing Bogotá now. He was making the war bigger, but he was isolated. He was alone. The net was closing on Pablo. His empire was starting to crack. His money was running low. But the most dangerous part was still to come. The climax was building. The final day was close. He knew this could destroy everything. The hunt for Pablo had entered its final phase. He was moving almost every single night. He slept on the floor in middle-class houses. He didn't use the luxury estates anymore. He was alone. He had only one bodyguard, a man named Limon. Pablo didn't trust anyone. He suspected betrayal in every safe house. His paranoia was like a physical weight. The ego that once built a private zoo was now hiding in a single room. The Search Block was close. They could feel the final moment. Their technology was listening. Every single call was noted. Every radio frequency was scanned. Pablo had always been smart, but his need to talk to his family was his weakness.
He called his son Sebastián almost every day. He wanted to hear his voice. He wanted to know his family was safe. But this emotional choice carried a huge risk. The search block was a monster with thousands of ears. It was December 2, 1993. Pablo had a birthday the day before. He couldn't resist calling his family one more time. He wanted to know how Sebastián's birthday party was. Sebastián told him to be careful. He told them the police were watching their house. But Pablo was desperate for connection. He loved his family more than his power. He kept talking. The calls were short, but this one was too long. Pablo spoke for over 3 minutes. He didn't know the search block now had a special plane with U.S. technology. It could find a single radio signal within seconds.
A search block officer on the street below fired his automatic rifle. Pop, pop, pop. The bullets hit the roof. One bullet hit Pablo in the leg. He fell flat on the tiles. He dropped his gun. The patron was flat. His ego was bleeding. His power was gone. He was not moving. He was flat on the roof. Pop, pop, pop. Another bullet hit him in the back. The monster was dead. The patron was gone. The $3,000 price was finally paid by him. The search block officers on the roof celebrated. They took pictures with his body. They smiled. They felt no morals. They had won. The pistol plan was over. The city was finally safe. In the streets of Medellin, there was no celebration. People were in shock. The patron was dead. Some people cried in public. They still loved him. But most people were in relief. They didn't have to live in fear. The pop, pop, pop was over. The consequences of one greedy man's ego were finally at an end. The death of Pablo Escobar ended the pistol plan. The hitmen had no patron. The money stopped flowing. The sicarios had no business. They were just poor men again. Thousands of young men who wanted to work for the cartel were dead. Pablo's ego had stolen a generation. This was a consequence that Medellin will always carry. The long-term consequences for Medellin were devastating. Thousands of police officers were dead. Thousands of sicarios were dead. The city was scarred by violence for decades. The streets will always remember the sound of the motorcycles and the pop, pop, pop. Cesar Gaviria, the man who wanted extradition, became the president of Colombia. He had taken the risks. He had won the political war against Pablo. But it was a hollow victory. The cocaine business didn't stop. The Medellín Cartel was gone, but other drug trafficking groups took its place. The cocaine just moved to new bosses, new leaders. The rule of silver or lead continued in Colombia. Power always finds a new face. Pablo's empire was a secret fortress built on a huge list of secrets and the lives of poor hitmen, and in the end, it was buried under it. He had achieved infinite return on his cocaine. He was a domestic terrorist, but the only thing he really achieved was making himself alone. In the final irony, villagers years later found one of Pablo's hidden stash houses in the jungle. It was a secret bunker worth millions. They didn't find silver. They didn't find money. They found empty rubber bands and the smell of rotted linen. Time had taken everything. Greed had built an empire, but it couldn't buy morals. Pablo Escobar thought he could buy the city, but he only bought its soul and then lost his own. He died alone, on a roof, far from his zoos and his money. The $3,000 bounty he put on the police only paid for his own ending.
He was the only target that truly mattered. Remember Officer Gomez from the beginning? He survived his attack, but his partner, Juan, did not. Carlos never went back to the police force. He left Medellin. He tried to start a new life, but the nightmares never stopped. The sound of a motorcycle engine will always make his heart stop. The sight of pop, pop, pop on a news channel will always bring back the fear. Carlos is one of thousands. They won the war against Pablo Escobar, but they carry the scars of his greedy, ego-driven choices every single day. The pistol plan may be over, but its consequences are like ghosts in the city of Medellin. The secret list of names that Pablo had was just a list of victims. He owned them with his money, but in the end, they just died for his power. History doesn't write their names. It only remembers the one name at the top, the one name that will always have a price. Some choices can never be undone. If you liked this video, make sure you subscribe and follow the channel. We upload new videos every single day. And trust me, the next story is even more intense, more surprising, and something you definitely don't want to miss. I'll see you in the next one.